right, now we're going to talk about colored pencils. This is a Prismacolor, and the set that you're using for this project are Prismacolors. What's nice about a Prismacolor is they are professional grade color pencils. This is what you'll see professional artists use all the time because they are unique. The binder that's inside of the color pencil is like a wax, and because of that they're really nice to blend. They like to mush into each other and blend very well. So as we start to layer colored pencils, they have a really great strength in creating a whole range of colors beyond just the colors that are in your set. And we'll talk about that as we do our techniques. The way to look at your colored pencil is, one, you always want a sharp tip. That's very important to keep it sharpened. Also, if you look on here, you have the name of the pencil. This is Sienna Brown. And then there's a number, PC945. That's unique for every colored pencil. So if you ever want to buy a replacement pencil, you can. And that's how you can tell the difference, because the outside colors can be very close and sometimes it's hard to figure out which color is which. So you always want to know your number and the name of the colored pencil. So to start our techniques, the first technique that you learned was value. And we talk about creating the value from light to dark. So doing that is about pressure. It's heavier pressure to lighter pressure. So I'm going to start from light to dark. And to create that value, as I start to shade, I'm going to start kind of in the middle. That's your best bet. Start kind of in the middle. And right now, I'm not really adding a lot of pressure. The pencil itself is sharp, and I'm just letting it drag on the paper. There's not a lot of pressure happening from my hand. I'm not pushing very hard. Notice how far back I'm holding the pencil. I'm not over here, because that makes it where you're drawing with just the tip and you get a very scratchy look. Instead, I'm holding my pencil from the back. So as I do this, I'm able to get a nice grading, like a nice smooth surface, and not have it look all scratchy like this. So I want it to be nice and smooth. Now, here's the trick. This part is a little easier, but I'm going to start trying to make it darker. And as I make it darker, I'm going to extend out my values. And I'm going to start adding a heavier pressure. I'm going to start pushing a little harder and pushing a little harder. And as I do this, I don't want it to be a step. One of the most common things is that there is a clear, different step from this step to this step. We want it to be a gradient. So to do this, I have to actually change my pressure. And I rotate my pencil quite often to keep the point sharp. But I have to change that pressure as I'm working. So over here, I'm pressing a little harder. Over here, I'm pressing a little softer. Over here, I press a little harder. And over here, I press a little softer. And what happens is that allows the pigment to shift as I'm working. And I do it pretty fast because I've done this a long time. But you can do this as well. And what's happening is I'm changing my pressure. So as I come over here, I want this to be the darkest that the pencil can go. So I'm going to start by adding that first kind of layer. The one thing I tell my students too when they're using colored pencil, at no time should your hand really be going crazy and hurting. You know, a lot of times you're pressing too hard, too fast. You want to build up that pressure slowly. So notice how I filled that in with the first layer, and now I'm going to keep coming over here, and I'm going to get it till it's darker. Craftsmanship, I'm staying inside the line. That shows control, and it takes a little effort to do so. So, you know, you want that to happen. I'm going to come over here and I'm darkening that edge. And as I do this, I get darker. And now I can start to control where my colored pencil is going and how heavy the pressure is. And I adjust. So heavier pressure over here, heavier pressure over here. And I start getting to lighter pressure. Lighter pressure, it's still pretty firm because it's a dark area. So it's still pretty firm pressure. And I can start doing my values. And again, I rotate my pencil quite a bit to keep that point sharp. And I'm going to now take this value to a lighter tone as it comes over here. So in order to do that, I'm going to change my tactic here. And I'm going to start pressing very lightly. I'm actually going to sharpen my pencil real quick. And I'm going to start pressing very light. So what happens is I'm actually putting no pressure on the pencil whatsoever. So over here, I add a little more pressure to blend, but here I'm actually barely touching the paper. I'm letting that pencil drag across with no weight of my hand on there. And as I do this, Over here, I'm actually even lifting up on the pencil. I'm barely letting it touch the page. That's how I get it so light. It takes control, but I'm really working on it being very smooth. And as I look at this, I see a big step between these two. So I want to get rid of that step. I want it to be nice and smooth gradient. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to practice that gradient. I'm going to go over and keep smoothing just by running over it a lot, very lightly. I actually can mix it on the paper and you can start to get a softer gradient. It's a little difficult to do, but it's a nice thing to try, and we'll practice this a lot. We'll practice this with all sorts of mediums, with pencil, color pencils, oil pastels, watercolor, paint. Well, we do these value scales quite often because they're such a great practice. So if you don't get it on the first time, try it again. It's okay. Do 2 of them, do 3 of them. That's how you get really good at this. It's by doing more than one. But as I do this, notice that is how I'm creating my little value scale.